An old regular, Paul Sullivan. Paul, so glad we finally got together and we could interview you today. You've had quite an extensive career, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Could you tell us about it? But please don't scare the rest of us away who come here.
Well, you know, I really have just been more of I've done a lot of different things in my life. Writing happens to be one of them, which I sort of fell into some years ago when I was living in Seattle. My wife wanted to know what I wanted to do. I was having trouble finding a job that I really liked, which was in advertising sales, which I'd done for like 20 years or so. And so I said, well, you know what, actually I'd like to write. And so she said, well, I'm making tons of money. I don't care what you do, just have fun doing it.
Boy, that's nice to know.
Yeah. So then we moved to Chicago, and I got into a writers group. And one of the members of the group was leaving to, this is no joke, she was leaving to go start a goat farm. She had been the editor of one of the local papers. And she said, I've got some beats that need covering. Would any of you writers like to go out and cover these, like city council, copy, and so on and so forth? And I'd never done any of that before. I was an English major in college, but had just spent my life before that selling stuff, mostly ad space. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And she sent me out on assignments. I wrote the stories. I came back. She said, yeah, you're pretty good at this. Keep doing it. So then I got a column from the Sun-Times newspaper group, not for the Sun-Times itself, but they published like 25 different papers around Chicago. And I started doing a column, and I found I really loved doing that. And so I had a contract with the paper, and then I started working for a publication out of Duluth, Minnesota, that dealt with cabin living and all things cabins, and they wanted me to do a column for them. So I signed a contract for them. So I was in kind of the envious position, although not making a huge ton of money, the envious position of being a fairly new writer that had 2 pre-sold contracts. I knew that if I wrote it, they were going to run it, and they were going to mail me a check for it.
Is it very difficult to get into a situation where you have a column to begin with, and you fell into it?
It did not seem very difficult.
Not for me, okay.
One of the papers was introducing a new section, and he contacted the moderator of the writers group and said, do any of your writers want to do a column? Have them submit some samples. And so I submitted 3 samples along with 10 other column ideas for the paper. And coming up with ideas for a column was actually fairly easy to me, at least in the beginning, because you know, you got all the holidays, you got everything else, you got the local people. It gets harder as you go along to come up with new, fresh ideas. But I was able to do that for 11 years, and had a great deal of fun doing it, and really enjoyed it. I don't write actively much right now. I still keep my hand in a little bit, but you know, it's mostly for fun, for stories to send to friends. You know, I hate to say this, but I think my verbs are circling the drain. So you know, when the nouns die, then it's all over.
Gotcha.
That's my story.
That's his story, and he's sticking with it, and we really appreciate Paul coming. He's always a delight to have with us. And we'll see you next week.